Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is an episode of It Came From the Network. Now, on It Came From the Network, we review the weird, the wild, the campy, and sometimes just downright bad stuff that you could find on the WWE Network. This time, we're going to be reviewing WCW SuperBrawl 3 from, I believe, 1993, and let's jump right into it. We're going to jump off with the bad, which is Max Payne playing a guitar rendition of the national anthem, which I actually believe is him pretending to play it while they play Jimi Hendrix's version, which is great and it's fun, but the character is kind of stupid and cheesy, which made it stupid and cheesy. They went with a lot of this kind of thing. Van Hammer, Max Payne would go over WWF Man Mountain Rock, where they had a heavy metal rocker type gimmick going. I don't know, they were trying, but it didn't come off well. And that's just putting it in layman's terms. We're going to jump right into the first match of the night. Brian Pillman and Steve Austin, not yet quite the Hollywood Blondes, but the beginning of their team, versus Marcus Alexander Bagwell, not quite yet buff, and Eric Watts, aka the son of Bill Watts. This was a decent match. Bagwell and Watts were still very green at the time. Pillman and Austin had an innate chemistry together where even early on in their tenure as a team, you could see there was something there and there was something special with both of these guys. It was good. I mean, it was a nice opening match. Like I said, Bagwell and Watts kind of a little bit young, not ready for this kind of spotlight in my opinion. And it was an okay match, nothing great. You got to see flashes of brilliance from Pillman and Austin, and a little bit of that from Bagwell, and very little bit from Watts, who I believe could have used another year of training before ever being put on TV. Got too much of a push too quick in his career and never really recovered from that. Next up, we have Too Cold Scorpio versus Chris Benoit. This one's a little bit strange because a lot of us, we like to think of Benoit coming from ECW into WCW, but this is from a time where WCW worked more often with New Japan Pro Wrestling. And at the time, Benoit was wrestling there as Wild Pegasus as himself. And this was kind of a talent share kind of thing. We got to see two guys. Scorpio is a guy that I think is one of the most underrated talents that's ever been in wrestling. He doesn't quite get the acknowledgement for the innovations he made. And Chris Benoit, who for reasons we're not going to go into, it's been talked about to death, his kind of memory has been swept under the rug and erased because of the stupid crap he done at the end of his life. However, they put on a great match, one of the best of the night in my opinion. Fun to see a young Benoit and a young Scorpio going at it. Two guys that you know would go on to future greatness. Next up, we had Wild Bill Irwin versus a debuting in WCW British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. Now, Wild Bill, he had been a mainstay of World Class Championship Wrestling in the AWA, part of the Rough Riders tag team there, and he was kind of used in WCW as a jobber to the stars, kind of a guy that you would see would be on their Saturday night show, and then he would be used in this kind of case. In this case, he put over the Bulldog in a rather quick match, obviously to highlight their new star coming into the territory. Which, of course, Davey Boy Smith was a tremendous star, and the match didn't do nothing myself. I understand why it was the way it is, and I understood even watching then it might have been fun to watch. seeing Bulldog in a new environment. Next up, we have a Falls Count Anywhere match with Paul Orndorff versus Cactus Jack. Now, I kind of scratched my head and couldn't remember the lead-up and why Cactus and Orndorff would have such a violent match. And apparently there was some things where they attacked each other that they glossed over in the commentary. This didn't quite fit. Orndorff was towards the end of his career, nowhere near the talent he was in the mid-'80s. You could start to see the issues he had with his arm. You could see that one arm is not as muscularly, as defined muscularly as the other one. You could already see it atrophying in this video. And Cactus is bringing his normal Cactus reckless style. There's a point in the match he goes for a sunset flip off the apron to the concrete, flips over Orndorff, and Orndorff doesn't go with him. He has to go after he lands, which blown spot, and you could see the Cactus Jack, and I think the Cactus Jack, even in WCW, was a brilliant character, and he's my absolute favorite wrestler of all time. This was more of a miss than a hit for Cactus. I don't want to blame him, and I don't want to blame Orndorff. I just think it was a wrong match for both guys at the wrong time of their career. Cactus hadn't become good enough where he could carry a match on his own yet, and Orndorff, his skills and physical prowess had deteriorated to where he would need someone to carry him to a great match, in my opinion. And I don't think he was ever really set for a hardcore style match. I mean, we'd seen him have some wild brawls with Hulk Hogan before this, but I don't think the style that Cactus Jack employed was more inducive on Orndorff having a great match. Next up, we have kind of a weird match on the card. The Heavenly Bodies, Dr. Tom Pritchard and Stan Lane, with beautiful Bobby Eaton and Jim Cornette in their corner, versus the Rock and Roll Express. Now, the reason I say this is weird, because this was the big feud in Smoky Mountain Wrestling at the time. It was kind of Smoky Mountain using and letting their top feud highlight WCW, get some publicity off of that, people buy tickets to their show, and so on and so on. You get some of the guys, you get the makings of the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express feud. A lot of the key components are there, which is why it brought some of the older NWA/WCW fans were happy for this match. Again, I think this was one, I've seen the two teams have way better matches, mostly in Smoky Mountain. To me, it was kind of a dud, kind of felt flat. The Rock and Roll Express picked up the win. Just, I don't know, to me, much like the match before, it kind of just fell flat. It just wasn't their best efforts. Next up, we have the aforementioned Max Payne versus Dustin Rhodes, who would go on to become Gold Dust. Dustin had the innate charisma and always had the style. I feel that he had to do Gold Dust to take himself that far out from Dusty's shadow, but even as the Dustin Rhodes, the natural character, he was a guy that was destined to be a future star and be a future main eventer. I believe Gold Dust he really needed to do to separate himself in his own mind. But I believe even at this, he could have still been a star. This was a solid match, nothing special. We see Dustin pick up the DQ win over Max Payne, who's obviously overwhelmed by Dustin. Obviously, not remembering exactly what went on after. This carried the feud on for probably another few months into the next pay-per-view, which I didn't look up to see if they did. But just a weird match. After coming off of two lackluster efforts, a decent match that ends with a crappy DQ kind of brings the sales back down. Now next up, we have for the NWA World title, which was a weird time in history. There was a WCW title and an NWA title, and they were both being defended in WCW. We had Barry Windham versus the Great Muta, who was the champion at the time. Now, before the match, we see Ric Flair make his return to WCW. from his 2-year stint in WWE. He joins the commentary team. They put on an excellent match. Probably this and Benoit and Scorpio are my favorites of the matches of the night. Windham picks up the win. And afterwards, we see Ric Flair get in the ring and kind of put the championship belt, a belt that he mentioned on commentary he never lost, the big gold belt. He puts it around Windham's waist as the champion and walks off, and kind of a weird scene and a weird to be filled out later. But by itself, a great match, great mood of one of the great Japanese wrestlers of all time. Barry Windham, much like I said with Too Cold Scorpio, a tremendous talent that was way underrated in his time, and a guy that I think really could have been a lot bigger than he actually became if he was allowed to. I think it hindered him a lot that he would use his, and he kind of followed the Bruiser Brody mold. He would go to the WWE for a year, and then when it was time for contract renegotiation, he would go to the NWA, where they would pay him more for 2 years. And then his contract would be up, and WWE would offer him more, so he'd go back there. And it kind of never really let him build his character to the heights it could be. He never really stayed in one place long enough to become the main star there, which he really should have been. He really should have been one of the guys that carried WCW and Jim Crockett Promotions in the 80s, in my opinion. Next up, the main event of the night, the White Castle of Fear match. Big Van Vader versus Sting. Basically, this is your average strap match. You got to touch all 4 corners. Much like I've said with the Heavenly Bodies and Rock and Roll Express, this was by far not their best match, and what I consider one of the great feuds in WCW, Vader and Sting. This was just kind of lackluster. Vader picks up the win. To me, it fell flat in a lot of places. It wasn't violent enough for a strap match. It didn't have that sense of they hated each other as much as some of their other matches did. And again, it felt like a lackluster performance, in my opinion, and just a little bit off. I've seen these two go, and I've seen them put on great, fantastic matches with other people and each other, and this one left me a little bit high and dry. And it was weird, it was a non-title match, but still Vader won. They could have easily made it a title match if Vader was going to win. No harm, no foul, but I don't know. It didn't connect for whatever reason. Now, coming from that, we're going to go into our ratings for this show. Now, if you've seen these before, or if you haven't, we're going to explain. We have a 1 to 5 scale. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. So 1 is a gobbledygooker, 2 is a renegade, 3 is a Hurricane Helms, 4 is a Gold Dust, and 5 is a Kane. As you can see, all super weird gimmicks, depending on their level of success. A 5 being a Kane, the most successful, and so on and so forth. I'm going to give this show a 3, give it a Hurricane Helms. I think we've seen some good things here. We had guys like Dustin, Rhodes, Pillman and Austin, Benoit and Scorpio, Cactus Jack, Great Muta, Sting, Vader. We had young talent getting a chance to shine. However, a lot of the matches missed more than they hit. We had a jobber match with Wild Bill Irwin versus the Bulldog. We had Bagwell and Watts not really being ready for a pay-per-view as a team or even solo wrestlers. Max Payne, who... like I said, the match was better than I expected it to be. I don't remember too many great Max Payne matches. But all in all, up and down the card, other than Windham versus Muta and Benoit and Scorpio, very lackluster. 2 very good matches that carry a whole card. Now that's 2 out of 1. 2 out of 8 matches, so a quarter of the card was great. The rest of the card was bad to lackluster. The greatness of those 2 matches, plus the greatness of some of the characters, they had some of the best wrestlers in the world appeared, and some of the greats of all time. Steve Austin, Ric Flair, Big Van Vader, Sting, Cactus Jack, Dustin Rhodes, Paul Orndorff, Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, and as part of the Heavenly Bodies, Barry Windham, the Great Muta. I mean, the skill and the talent level was there. It just didn't connect for me. And it was just one of those pay-per-views. It was kind of lackluster. And this was an era, actually, 93 and 94. WCW was putting on great wrestling shows. They just couldn't gain any ground on WWE. Unfortunately, sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes you have to put on spectacles before people realize the great wrestling that you have. But basically, that's all I have to say about that. The show was a 3, a Hurricane Helms. And my name is George Coles. This has been another episode of It Came From the Network.